I'd like to call our meeting to order at this time. As Mike is continuing to get everything passed out, he'll have a sheet for the public comment sign up. Feel free to, once he brings that out, just sign up. To begin with, though, I'll begin with a question, and we'll delay some time that way as well. The question I have for tonight, we're getting close to Halloween, is what is a favorite costume from your history? And some of us have, I guess, more years than others, but that you have been able to don for Halloween, a favorite costume.
Ready down here? Yeah. Am I on? I am number 4 out of 5 kids, and I have 3 older brothers, so I grew up thinking I was a boy most of the time anyway. And the first year that I was a princess, and I tried to turn one of my brothers into a frog, so that was it.
Very good.
So I grew up with the Lone Ranger, and so my favorite costume was to look like the Lone Ranger out saving everybody on the night of Halloween.
It's a great one. A couple of years ago, I did the Swedish Chef. Do you remember him from the Muppets? You know, Horky Dorky, that guy. So that was a fun one for me.
My most memorable, including a long scythe with a plastic blade on it, was the Grim Reaper.
Well, I was, some of you know, I was 8 years in the legislature back in the 70s and early 80s, and we had a tax bill. Can't quite remember the details. We were trying to pass, and my wife and I went as Robin Hood and whatever his
Maid Marian.
Maid Mary.
Marian.
Yeah. Yeah, that was at a party. We weren't actually trick-or-treating.
When everybody's done, could I make a comment?
Yeah, sure. Tom, do you have a selection you would like to share?
I dressed up as a nightstand.
Very good. Walt.
Lampshade for a hat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to take note. Some of you perhaps saw in the Kitsap Sun several days ago the passing of Mrs. Helen Miller. And probably no one on the board other than Rick and myself will recall, but when the PFD first got started, Helen Miller was our most faithful attendee. Frequently, she was the only attendee from the public. And when we would ask for public comment, frequently Helen would have something to say. And so she was a very gracious lady and very supportive of the Public Facilities District, particularly in its formative days. And I just wanted to note her passing.
Thank you for sharing that history, Walt. Has everybody had an opportunity to look over our minutes? And if so, can I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, before we get into the agenda, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add an item.
All right.
If I can get a second.
I'll second
it. I'd like to add an item in between 4 and 5 to discuss spending and project spending. And the reason I want to have that discussion is we have an ILA and number 5 where there is a request for some money, and I think, I know at least for myself, I'd like to have a general idea of what we're doing overall before we get into that discussion. And I think if we can have a discussion, we may come away with some consensus of what we might be doing. So that's why I would like to add that item.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. let's have discussion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, let's vote on that. All in favor of having, specifically the motion again was a discussion on funding,
Spending.
on spending, a discussion on spending as a 4.5 before we get into the discussion of the ILAs. If you are in favor of that, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay? All right. We will add that to our agenda. 4.5, discussion of spending. All right. Now, back to our minutes. Can I have a motion for the approval of the last meeting's minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes of September 23rd.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those, or any discussion or any things to note on the minutes? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 And nay for those opposed? All right, motion to approve minutes is passed. All right, public comment. Have we had time to sign your names up for anybody who would like to make public
I
comment?
have names.
All right. Can I please have the list of names? All right, the first person is Gary Anderson. Gary, a reminder that we go with a strict 3 minutes for each person. So thank you, Gary, for being here.
Thank you, Port Commissioner, Port Board members. I'm sorry, Public Facilities Board members. My name is Gary Anderson, and I'm a candidate for the Port of Bremerton Commissioner District 2 seat. And I am in support of the Port Orchard Community Center proposal. And if the voters agree, next year I'll be a Port Commissioner and will be anxious to lend my support to that project. I think it'll be very good for Port Orchard and for the people of South Kitsap. And I'm here to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next on the list is Jay Rosepepe. Thank you. City of Port Orchard. Welcome, Jay. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. As deliberations continue on project funding, the clock continues to tick on the Port Orchard Community Center proposal. On the KPFD website, the proposed project must provide significant economic impact as well as benefit to residents in the communities of Kitsap County, with the 4 main goals of the Kitsap PFD being economic development, efficient use of public and private monies, innovation, and multiple use of facilities. In each case, the community center overwhelmingly meets these goals, starting with the request for a commitment of $12 million that will generate $110 million of private investment back into the community, a 9-to-1 return on investment. That is economic development. The innovation will be the continued restoration of the shoreline that is environmentally prudent. There are multiple public uses that the community center will be utilized by the community groups and citizens of Port Orchard and South Kitsap. We have a mayor, council, and staff who are committed to making Port Orchard a destination, as demonstrated by successfully completing projects that recently included Tremont Street, McCormick Village, and Rockwell Parks. We know the time and financial commitments we must make to see a project to completion. Mayor Patanzu is asking for commitment by the Kitsap Public Facilities District so we can continue to build a healthy and vibrant city that reflects the values and culture of its residents and those of Kitsap County. Jeffrey Chaucer said, "Time and tide waits for no man." It's time to stop imagining Port Orchard and to invest in Port Orchard and South Kitsap. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next on the list here is Kathleen Wilson, representing the Kitsap Regional Library. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you so much. My name is Kathleen Wilson. I'm a branch manager at the Port Orchard location of Kitsap Regional Library. And I just want to express that the library is very encouraged to see the Port Orchard Event Center project moving forward. And we look forward to continuing to partner with the City of Port Orchard and our community on this project.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next on our list is Peter Butello. Okay. My apologies. Yep. And then to finish, Jerry McDonald. Welcome, Jerry.
Good evening. This afternoon I was out at the port, and we ended up driving by the drag strip where several police agencies were doing their emergency evac training. In a couple of years, that very well may not be possible. And I think that should be a concern to each and every one of you. Perhaps yeah, and then the Port Orchard project ended up to being the #1 project that you voted for, and the Circuit of the Northwest was a #4, if I'm not mistaken. What was interesting to me was the fact that they probably are at least 2 years down the road to even getting started on their project. Once completed, they're going to be in the same position that Bremerton ended up with when they finished their conference center. There just weren't enough hotel rooms around. In Bremerton, this currently is being corrected, but they're building another hotel. That's 3 hotels we have in the city. The last item is the Circuit of the Northwest will definitely help Port Orchard. This has not been acknowledged as far as I know thus far. The circuit will draw lots and lots of tourists to our area. Just because the circuit is located in Bremerton, which is very close to Port Orchard where the track is, Port Orchard will benefit. In fact, Port Orchard's probably closer to the track than Bremerton is. I would like, if you could, to consider again how you voted, how that money is going. I'm afraid that some of the public aspects of that track may not be available if the public aspect of the funding is not corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 4 on our agenda, financial reports. Mike, will you take us through the financial reports?
Yes, I can, Darren. The sales tax revenue summary shows an income of $159,155, and that amount is up 5.1% over last year. And if you scan back to the left, you'll find that many of the items in each month, particularly the last couple of months, have been the largest ever received by the PFD. As is usual with our financials, we have the debt service that's deducted of $70,000, leaving a net of $87,000. Our expenses for the month of September were $17,000. So the net from that revenue to our cash position is an additional $70,000. Any questions about that part?
Mike, on the yellow sticky point, you've got 159, and on the actual part of above, it's 157.
I'm sorry. Speak into your microphone.
Right with the chair. On the yellow sticky part, you've got 159, 155, and in the column AG for the month,
yeah,
you've got 157. I just want to clarify.
The sticky part was corrected to be 157,
Okay.
and when I read it quickly, I noticed that the loop was still there.
I got it too. I see the math. Thank you.
And there's a notation down at the bottom. So far this year, the total through 9 months was up 3.2% over last year. And there was a question raised by one of the directors about how much our income had increased on average over the first 17 years of the PFD's existence. And I did find a complicated formula by which you can calculate that. And even better, I found a website that had a calculator on it. And it turns out that from 2004 to 2019, actually 2002 to 2019, the compound growth rate was 3.8%. So in actual fact, we're running a little behind the average this year. In looking at the financial statements that you had in your packets, there were two primary ones. The statement of financial positions by fund, the one with the pretty colors on it, and that designates what the balances are in each of the funds in which we move or transfer money around. As I mentioned to you last meeting, I will be working with the Treasurer's office to add additional funds so that when we do have construction money committed to the projects, that we can transfer that money into those funds and manage each one individually. So we'll get more colors on the chart in the very near future. The key item is in the 977 fund, which is the green fund. That balance is now up to $2.8 million.
And Mike, just to review, our only commitment out of that 2.8 is 500 for the county?
That is correct. Yeah, we have made a reservation, if you will, of $500,000 toward the project at the fairgrounds for Lobie Field. They are still developing the grants and other parts of the funding for that. So they have not come back to us yet and said, gee, we got this all worked out. Here's the plan. Where's the money? And so we'll get a heads up when that occurs. The other sheet that you have is the profit and loss budget performance, in which we have the first column of numbers is the actual expenditures in September and the budget numbers for each of those. And the other column is the year-to-date expenditures and budget. And the last column is the actual budget number itself. And we will be discussing a little later on the proposed budget for 2020. Any questions about those numbers?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's worth noting that Mike just discussed the compound annual increase over the last 17 years of our existence is 3.8%, and our most optimistic projection for future revenue was 3%. So that's pretty good news.
Yes.
Thank you, Walt. Mike, moving on to item number B, 4B.
You should have in your packets a copy of the front sheet of the blanket voucher for the PFD expenses in the amount of $7,711.04. And those expenses are led yet again by our legal expenses.
Any questions on the expenses for the month by anyone?
I move we approve the blanket voucher.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right.
I have a question for Mike.
Yeah.
Like back on the revenue sheet where in your little yellow sticker down here at the bottom, it shows expenses of 17,000. Help me understand what period that's for.
Yeah, that's that can get confusing on those sheets. That should correspond to the number on the bottom of the tan colored or brown sheet where I described the three columns. If you look down at the bottom of that column where it says total expense, $16,987.67. And that corresponds to the number that I gave of $17,000 for, I did round it off by $13 up to $17,000. But
So that's for the calendar month of September.
calendar month of September, that's correct.
Thank you.
That motion was approved. We've sent the sheet down for your signatures. Moving on to 4C for the blanket voucher of the C&W project. Mike, will you speak to this?
Yeah, this is the ongoing expense for the Phase 2 work that is being done in preparation for the eventual construction of the Circuit of the Northwest. There is two components to that, a consulting side and a professional or engineering side. The two components add up to $33,945. This, as it turns out, is an August expense. The September expense is going through the signature process with Port of Bremerton, and when that's completed, I'll get the final invoice from them for our portion of that.
All right. Can I have a motion for that
Move we approve the blanket voucher for the C&W.
and a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion or any questions?
What fund does this come out of? Does this also come out of the 977?
Correct. That comes out of the 977
Obligations
fund. Yeah, because we hadn't authorized anything for construction, as I had mentioned at the last meeting, I had not requested a specific fund to be set up for Circuit of the Northwest. This was preparatory documents and technical preparation for eventual construction. perhaps it may have been better if I had set up an account for that, but like we had done for some other pieces of projects, we had taken that out of the 977 or the basic general fund.
So our commitment out of 977 of the 2.8, in addition to the 500 for the Fairgrounds Lobie Field project, is 500 and whatever it was for Circuit of the
That
Northwest.
is correct. That's right.
So about
Since we
about
were
$1 million
taking it-
out of the 2.8.
Yeah.
Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion passes. I'll send this down the row as well for your signatures. I'd like to now move on to agenda number 4.5, discussion of spending. And Bill, you were the one who asked for this, so why don't you set us up for the discussion that you'd like us to have?
Okay. We've been at this process for over 18 months now in advertising and receiving proposals for projects, and it's been several months since we did our priority listing, and so a couple of months ago we authorized the executive director, and tonight we have several ILAs in front of us, which is going to require some money from for us to commit. We have one meeting left this year in December, and it seemed to me that it was time for us to perhaps give a signal of what projects we would be interested in funding and the timeliness of that, and what kind of basis for that funding that we would have. So, as you recall, we've received 3 options from our financial consultant. One was that we'd issue our bonds ourselves. The second one was to have the county issue it like they did the last time. And the third was to basically allocate money and tell the project proponents that they had to raise their own financing. And so along that line, we met with the county commissioners, and that's been, I think, about 2 months ago. And you know, I hear from other people what they're going to do, but we've never heard from them what they're going to do. So I presume that they're not going to be interested in partnering with us again like they did last time. And frankly, I'm not sure I would be in favor of that anyway when we look at the amount of money we can generate by not issuing bonds. Our consultant gave us 3 options from 1.5% to 2 to 3. And that provides really the most amount of money that we can that we could spend on projects over a period of well, until 2041. So, so I'd like to have a discussion about what we might like to see. And I have a proposal I'd like to give to the board. I've done some work in analyzing the amount of money we have, the revenue stream according to our financial consultant, and I'd like to have it considered tonight that we would use it as a guideline for allocating money out over the period of 15 years. Glad to present that if anybody else has anything to say.
I would say please present it.
Okay.
I would just say, Bill, my concern with the third option where we would require the project sponsors to get their own funding, and we would pay their debt service out of our revenue stream. My concern over that is whether or not they were able to get as good an interest rate as we can get with tax-exempt bonds, either through the county or on our own.
So my proposal is for a spending plan for construction and property acquisition, and it's based on equity. It seems to me we have in the past. Did you pass those down for? Most of the money in the first go-around was given to central Kitsap area, and with a little bit up at North Kitsap. So what I've done is I've taken that money and I've taken the 2% increase in sales tax and brought those together to see what the total would be of those two, and that amounts to about $46 million that we would use as a basis. And when you take a look at the projects that we have on our priority list, and you add in what has already been spent, I would suggest that we could, in North Kitsap, we could allocate $5 million to the Port Gamble Heritage Park, $5 million to Paulsville Event Center, and $5 million to the Bainbridge Island project, for a total of $16,500,000. In Central Kitsap, again, they received $4 and $7 million in initial funding. We pledged $500,000 to the fairgrounds, which should count in that thing, and then $2,800 for the Central Kitsap High School district, which would total up $14,300,000. And in South Kitsap, $10,500,000 for the city of Port Orchard, and $6 million for the Port of Bremerton. So when you look at how we could do that, in the next paragraph, Port Orchard, we would issue a bond issue, a small bond issue. We already have to do that because of the requirement of the state legislature to refund some of the money that we have there. And so if we added into that $5.5 million for Port Orchard, that would address a little bit of your problem, Walt, because we would do that. Then we would give them a payment of $295,000 over beginning in the year 2025 for 17 years. The second priority, Paulsville, $5 million starting in 2026 with an allocation of $312,500. The Kitsap Foundation, the park, Port Gamble Park, $5 million. Down the line, Port of Bremerton, $6 million. They would start in 2021 with 20 annual payments of $300,000. The Bainbridge Island Park District, $5 million, beginning in 2026. And then Central Kitsap School District, $2.8 million in 2021. And the chart behind that packet shows you the how that could be accomplished. I've taken the numbers off of our the material that we've been given by our consultants, and you can see what the revenue is each year through 2041, what our operating expenses would be, what the debt service would be, and I've indicated there $450,000 a year for the new bonds, and that's my guesstimate. The financial consultants would give us more firm numbers on that. That would begin in 2024. We'd issue the bonds in 2023. And then project funding, you add those numbers up, it begins with $440,000 a year in 2021, bumps up to $735,000 in 2024, and then up to $1,672,500 in 2025, which goes on through 2041. There's a period of time, beginning in 2025, that we don't raise enough money to make those payments. However, when you look at our reserve fund, as a result of the sales tax coming in, we maintain a healthy reserve fund, which then starts to grow in about 2034 and ends up about $3,600,000. You could play with these figures and delay some payments or till later on, or however you want to do it. The thing I think is important to remember is the first three projects, we don't know when they're going to need money. I mean, they're Port Orchard, it seems like it's going to be probably 3-4 years, maybe 5 years before they need any money, except for the soft cost, which I have not included in here. There's been some discussion about studies and soft costs that those would be taken care of out of our existing reserve fund that we have. And so this would be strictly for construction and property acquisition. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, any questions?
So this is dependent on the City of Port Orchard, City of Paulsbo, County Parks Foundation, and the port being able to finance this amount, and then we would essentially pay the debt service on it.
Well, depending on, yes, the simple answer is yes, but if this is the amount we would give them, and then whether they would want to issue bonds for the total amount and pay the interest rate themselves, or where they want to back out the interest rate, that would be up to them.
Okay.
Any other question for Bill? I for one, am in support of not bonding as much as we can. And the reason is just looking at the total numbers, the numbers we have been given by our financial advisor is if the PFD were to take out bonds on our own, we would have a total of 14.6 million based on 2% growth. If we went with the county as a partner, we would have 19.9 million on 2% growth. And if we did it as Bill is saying, where we asked our partners to be the ones to either get the bonds or find some other way of servicing the debt, we would have 40 million. And so to me, it's an easy choice of we're going to fund one project, or we're going to fund a number of them very partially, which is not what they've asked us for, or we're going to be able to fund at least 3 in total for what they're asking for. And so I'm in favor of trying to get as much money into the county as possible and into these projects as possible. So I agree with the rationale. As far as the way of looking at what are the priorities and how to split up the money, I too, for my own kind of cash flow analysis, started working on an Excel sheet for like, okay, if we're going to do it where we don't bond, how would that work? And with the requests that have been put before us up to this date, what could we do? everything in here is conservative as far as it's the 2% numbers that we receive from the financial advisor, and it is in fact less than what we do have in the bank as of the financial reports today. But you can see up on top, I said the Lobie Field for $500,000, taking down our balance to $2,340,000. If you can see that, follow my rationale. And then this, in some ways, it's good to have the bigger picture conversation of financial discussion, but I thought we would end up having this conversation when we discuss the Port Orchard ILA, excuse me. And so you see in there funding for their first 3 tasks, which is a total of $1 million, which would take our cash balance down to $1,304,000. You also see funding for Paulsbo Events Center for their 244 that they're asking for this phase to begin that, immediately. The same for Heritage Park for doing the track that they've asked for, and for beginning the study for Bainbridge Aquatic Center. The rationale behind that is that I think we're committed to our top 3 projects. That's the amount of money that we have. And so the Aquatic Center, though, we can help with helping with their study. But if you partition it then the rest of the way, you can give the first $12 million to Port Orchard. You can give roughly the next $12 million to Paulsbo. You can give the next roughly $12 million to Heritage Park. And if we do have higher tax, or if we do have higher growth rate, which historically we would expect, well, then we can fund other projects when we see that the cash balance is sufficient to be able to commit to those. So another way of looking at it. I like your breakdown, and I'm glad you used the 2%, Bill. I think on the operating expenses for the district itself, you've got 1% in there. It's such a small base number, 1%'s too low. We just, nothing's running at 1% anyway, and when we're only talking a couple $100,000, 1%, we could have a rent raise that would wipe that out in 2 months. So I think we need to bump that up substantially. It won't make much change number-wise, but percentage-wise on it.
Yeah, I just took that off of the material at the.
That what they did too.
At the
same question then to them. Yeah.
Any other comment before we move forward into discussion of the ILAs?
Well, it seems that we need probably to have our financial advisor review these. I don't know that he has done, I assume he has not done that. Is that correct? Both of these, and comment on them for feasibility and holes in them and assumptions that need to be.
Along that line, I'd like to move to approve the attached construction land acquisition spending plan as a guideline for allocating funds to the identified projects, and direct our executive director and our consultants to complete a financial review of the assumptions. Furthermore, direct our executive director to report back to us at our next meeting the results of the financial review and a timetable for necessary documents to implement the spending plan.
Why don't you repeat it to begin with, just so we can all hear it.
All right. I move to approve the attached construction and land acquisition spending plan as a guideline for allocating funds to the identified projects, and direct our executive director and our consultants to conduct a financial review of the assumptions. Further, to direct our executive director to report back to us at our next meeting the results of the financial review and a timetable for necessary documents to implement the spending plan.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
I'm not comfortable with putting the guideline in there. I'd like to see it be reviewed, but I think it's too rough a draft to be considered a guideline yet.
What kind of a word would you suggest?
Would just drop that part. I like the direct our consultants to conduct a financial review of it.
Agree with that.
I would agree with that too, especially for giving guideline, that word, for how we would spend it, because by you putting down the numbers of what we would give to each project, I feel like that has moved us backwards from where our priority ranking had set us in the beginning, and it's reshuffling. And so I think some of these decisions we have at least made, and then now we're trying to figure out exactly how to implement them. So I think this moves us back.
Well, actually, what I do is suggest we fund the top 6 priorities. I mean, that's what I'm suggesting. I don't know how more clear that could be. The 7th one, let me just say, the 7th one, I think, needs a lot of work to it. I don't think, it ended up the last place of our priority listing. And maybe in the future, if they would come back to us, that might work. But again, to me, a guideline means it's a guideline. If the financial consultants come back and say this ain't going to work, it won't work. But if they come back and say it will work, it seems to me it's a fair. We hit all of the projects, and it equalizes out the funding for projects. It's a guideline, is all it is. It's not the final decision until we hear from our financial consultant.
Any other discussion? Okay, for a vote then. All those in favor of Bill's motion aye?
Aye.
All those opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. All right, the motion does not carry.
Okay.
Let's move forward to the discussion of ILAs.
But would it carry without the words in it? Without the word guideline?
Would you like
make
to
a motion
propose that motion?
I'll make a motion. We refer this proposed spending plan to our executive director and our consultants to review, do a financial review, and report back to us at our next meeting.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Again, discussion.
Just a point of clarification, Bill, the $500,000, it's less than that now since we've already paid some of it, but the $500,000 that we've committed to the Circuit of the Northwest is that part of the $6 million that you have in your proposal for South Kitsap,
No.
Port of Bremerton?
No.
Again, I would speak against it because I do think it moves us backwards. It is putting numbers on paper for Bill's understanding of where we should fund. And I agree with the concept of not bonding for the majority of the money so that we can do more. So I like the numbers, but as far as the prioritization of the different projects, I think it confuses the process that we've done so far.
And that is not something the financial review would look at anyway. They're only going to look at the numbers, right? That's what we'd be asking them to do.
That's mainly what I'm interested in, as to whether these numbers, projections, our ability to pay these amounts of money make sense. I think we still would have the opportunity to within those amounts, to juggle who gets how much.
The discussion I would have for that too is these are numbers that we've already received from our financial advisors. So I don't know what we would be asking them to do besides just to check our math, because at least for the statement that I gave you, they're directly pulled right from the 2% statement that our financial advisors gave to us. And I believe Bill's numbers are the exact same ones.
However, I wasn't certain what the bond indebtedness would be. Those numbers they need to look at that too.
I'd be happy for them to check our math.
that were the case, we just need to ask if 46 works.
Pardon me?
We don't need to provide them with the breakdown of how it's spent. We just need to give them a total.
And
And I believe we already have been given that.
is that what this sheet is from Northwest?
That's what
so
that sheet
it's the
is.
40,540 on it. And that's with the 2% revenue increase and 1% operating expense increase.
All right, so all those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed,
No.
say nay.
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 Hey,
Motion does not carry. I do think that we should have the numbers vetted again. We can ask them to look at it, but I think our numbers that we've put on paper have already been, we took it from them. Let's move on to the discussion of the ILA, number 5 on our agenda. First up is Port Orchard. So those representing the Port Orchard ILA, would you please come to the mic and give us an update on your proposal?
Certainly. First, I'd like to thank Kathleen Wilson from the Library District and my council members, Diener and Rosa Pepe, for being here tonight, and other members of the public. So since your last meeting, city staff and I have worked with your staff on an ILA as you directed. The ILA, which I think is in your packet, outlines 8 specific tasks that allow the city, its public partners, the PFD, to monitor the progress and provide checkpoints during this process. I was asked to facilitate a meeting with Kitsap Bank's senior management and the executive board of the PFD. I felt this meeting was very productive, and I hope it gave them a better understanding of the bank's position, financing options, and the urgency surrounding the community center. I can assure you from that meeting, we bonded our Tremont project, and private placement bond got 2.1%. So I know that we, as a city, if we ended up being the borrower, I know we can get a very competitive rate. I'm hopeful that one of our partners is playing that role, but it isn't fully vetted who that is. But I know that that your alternative that pledges cash flow works very well for us. And as what Bill was outlining with the $1.5 million in soft costs from your cash flow, the $1 million for real estate acquisition, and the $9.5 million for the actual construction, that works for us for that total of $12 million that's outlined in the ILA that's gone back and forth between us. I also provided Mike Walton and the executive board a feasibility study that was completed for the Sound West Group by Econ Northwest in March of 2019. If you were able to accept this report, you could eliminate task 1 in almost a year from our process.
Mayor Patansu, one moment. I, at least in my packet, don't have a copy of the ILA.
I don't either.
Do any of you have a copy of the ILA that?
Yeah, he passed it out.
There is one ILA that I have in mind that is the Paulsbo ILA, but I do not have a copy of the one you're speaking to. So I'd just like to get it in front of everybody before we.
Gone back and forth about 3 times between your legal counsel and ours. I assumed that you would have gotten it. Have it?
Yeah.
That's the one you sent today?
No, I sent it last week.
You and I
On the
could
25th.
get copies.
Brought copies. I have one copy, if you'd like it.
Let's see. I think Mike is still trying to look through his folders.
Mayor, I have a question. Your opening comment was about the project, your highway project out there. What did you say your bonding was for that?
We have bonding capacity well in excess of what we're asking for from the PFD. It was a $21 million project. We bonded $6 million on that project. We have capacity far in excess of our comfort level.
Thanks for that.
Or than our city council has comfort, and as do I. I'm not the policymaker.
Thank you for that.
Mike, do we have copies of the ILA? Brian?
So, Mike was out of town at the end of last week. I'm showing an email that I sent to all of the board members Friday with the current version, and then I did a cover memo. Does nobody receive that?
We did. I just don't know if, has everybody printed that out and brought that with them? Usually it's provided in our packets. But did all of you receive that?
I received the email,
Got
but
your cover
I was unable to print it.
I reviewed it on my computer, but could not print it.
Sorry about that.
Mayor Patansu, please continue. You
Okay.
can pull it up on your phones if you have that capability.
And I have one printed copy here, so I'd gladly share with anyone.
You could. I will take it.
You love
I'll
that?
share it with Walt. We're the two. We're the.
And the steps that I'm referring to are about page 4 or 5. Earlier, Mr. McDonald made a statement about hotels, and our project isn't on the scale of the Bremerton Conference Center and isn't intended to be. It's on the scale of the Kingston Community Center, which is about a 30,000 square foot facility. 10,000 square feet is roughly a library, and 10 or 12,000 square feet is convertible conference space. It's not at all intended to be on the scale of the Bremer. It's meant to support the master plan project and the corporate campus there. So as the top-rated project, I hope this evening that you can commit to a funding outline of some sort for our community center. I give Kitsap Bank the assurance they need to move forward on their new corporate campus in Port Orchard. So I'm here to answer questions, and if you want to take a moment to review what I sent to you, and I'm not sure all of you either got the feasibility study too that was done previously by the developer.
We did all get that.
Yeah, the project works. The community center project works if the master plan project is built, and that's really what's in the feasibility study.
Mayor, I raised the question of the existing marketing plan that was done, I think, by the bank, wasn't it?
It was done by Soundwest Group, actually, by Econ,
If I may
for
ask, I'm
Soundwest
they've
Group
all
by
seen that.
Econ Northwest.
So my question is that you had originally put in there $100,000 to do a study, and it seemed to me that we could take that study and have it updated for a lot less than $100,000. How's that presented in your?
It's not at all in that. What is in the ILA that's been coming back and forth? I'm just providing you an alternative.
Okay.
If you want to share, everybody's concerned about us getting, a shovel in the ground sooner, and we'd like to too. If we have an opportunity to save almost a year in time and $100,000. Maybe there's a trigger that put into the ILA for the master plan project moving forward. In one of those steps versus another feasibility.
So it's not in there at all now, huh?
What's that?
It's not in the existing.
It is. Mike, Brian, and our staff have been working on what you have before you. I'm just throwing a curve out here tonight.
Yeah, we apologize for not having the ILA before us so that we can have a more clear conversation. But we'll go through it slowly and make sure that we get the conversation completed. I think for the board, one important piece of the breakdown of the different tasks would be important for being able to say yes to the ILA and defining those. And so, Aaron, do you have a copy of it before you?
Only on my phone.
Okay. And Tom, do you have a copy of it?
No, I don't.
Walt, do you?
I have found a copy, yes. I think it's the same one.
So,
Frankly, I'm not sure where I
Bill,
got
do
it.
you have a copy?
No.
Okay. So
You can have this one if you two guys want to look at
I
it.
believe, though, I gave the executive board a copy
Yes.
of last week's meeting.
Yep.
That's
And
probably where I got mine.
And it's not substantially different than that document. I mean, we've gone back and forth with some subtle language, and matter of fact, our attorney, from what Brian gave us last Friday, of course, I'm part of your legal bill, and why it's so big. This is going back and forth. There's some subtle changes to language, but not in the dollars or the timelines.
so what I have is that task 1 was 100,000, task 2 was 300,000, task 3 was 600,000, task 4 was $1 million estimated, task 5 was 500,000, and task 6 was $9.5 million. Because we don't have that paper in front of us, we have a couple of copies up here, but can you just speak to what each of those tasks are for? Because I think that is the important piece. We're confident in Brian's work with you for the rest of the legal work, but I think funding is going to be the main issue. So
I've got it.
what those amounts are for and what the timeline is for each of them.
I handed you my copy, so I'd love to if you gave me my copy back.
You want
There
it
you go.
back?
Okay. Share that. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm working off to, so you can hand that one to them and all. So from the meeting that we had with our attorney and your attorney, I think it was basically agreed from our last meeting. You had an ILA document in a template. We had deliverables, and what Brian sent to us in this second draft is merging those two documents together and making our tasks and deliverables part of your existing framework. So if you skip, there's an attachment A on page 7 of the document, which is our description of the project, and really those tasks and deliverables are attachment B, and they start on page 8 of this document, which is what you refer to the $100,000, which is the feasibility study, which if you want a new one, we'll gladly do that, but we're estimating because it's a public process. The private developer picks up the phone and orders one. We have to go through a public process to select one, whether it's us or you. That takes time. And we believe from start to finish of that process is going to take anywhere from 9 to 12 months. There is a feasibility study that has been done. And whether it's a new study or the existing study, the project works if there's a $120 million master plan project built next door to it. I think we can safely assume that when you build 200 residents and a corporate campus with 50,000 square feet of Class A office space, that I think our 12,000 square feet of conference space is feasible. But if you want it in there, we'll do it. Task 2 is $300,000 for project planning, design, outreach, design, and cost estimates, and that's to get us to a base level design, conduct a public outreach process to determine, we know that it's a library, we believe it's a library, we believe it's conference space. It's very similar in model to the Kingston facility. That last third in Kingston has a senior center component to it, and it has the Boys and Girls Club in it. I don't know what that last third is. It could be an aquatic center. I know there's a need with our high school. It could be community theater. It could be the Boys and Girls Club or a senior center. We are in the process on our dime. I think it's going to be to the tune of about $70,000 to update our parks plan and conduct a community survey to determine, because I believe our maintenance and operations costs for this are going to need come from the community, and we need to reach out to our community and find out what it is they want in that last third. I believe by this time next year, we'll have that plan. I think it will likely involve us going out to a vote of our citizens for a Parks and Recs levy. But we have to tell them, have them tell us that's what they want. And so that's part of this, is that finishing that design and knowing what that last third is and getting to low-level concept, 20-30% design. Moving on to, it's actually to step 3, gets us to a 60% design, which that's an additional $600,000 cost estimates and all the permitting related to the project. That is an additional 9 to 12 month process. Task 4 is acquiring real estate. We're estimating at $1 million. And then step 5 is $500,000, which is the 100% ad-ready construction documents and being ready to go forward with construction. At this point in time, we take there's a shoreline restoration and a pier public pier that we would restore. At this point in time, we separate these two projects. From a shoreline permitting aspect, we want to marry it all together. But at this point in time, we're looking at the $9.5 million plus the additional $7 or $8 million that we're going to have to raise, whether it's through a Parks and Recs levy and other indebtedness. I think it's grants. Some of it is coming from grants, and we're putting our lobbyists to work on at the legislature. The pier and the shoreline restoration will compete very well for other grants. And so we don't want to tie these two. At this point, we want to separate those projects, and we'll pursue other grant funding, and those will become city projects. They won't be part of this community center, but they are vital to the downtown redevelopment. The last task is actually the construction. I think we're going to, depending on whether we need another feasibility study, we're 2 or 3 years out on the inside to get to this. With each one of these tasks, we have a check-in with my policy board, our public partners' policy boards, and coming back to you to make sure that each one of these steps, that this project still makes sense. We're looking for this global commitment, but if any point, if this project doesn't work, the master plan project doesn't move forward for some unforeseen reason, economic factors that we can't foresee today, there's an opportunity for, on either side, to pull the plug on this thing. I don't think that's going to happen, but we need to prepare for that, that event. And really on the financing side, we can get all hung up in. I think pledging the cash flow is a great alternative. But today, to say that we're going to get 2%, 3%, or 5%, we don't know. This is far enough down the road. We don't know what interest rates or the economy are going to do. So with that, I'll answer your questions.
I wanted to first ask our legal representation, Brian, if you would just speak to the breakdown, well, to the ILA as a whole, anything you want to say about it, as well as the tasks and what Mayor Patansu said of we're asking for a global commitment, but there are protections or there are stops along the way after each task to make sure that we're all still on the same page with that.
So, thank you, Darren. So, I guess it was at the last meeting, we had the introduction of this idea where we, the PFD, had prepared we were using a template for an ILA that was more short-term than long-term. It wasn't for a whole project. It was to get the project going or through feasibility or so. And the mayor of the city came back with the request for a full commitment and explained the reason why they needed the full commitment now. And what the level of commitment was. And what the board asked me to do was, can you find a balance? And so what I tried to do was try and get to the point of the full commitment, but not an unequivocal commitment, that there would be these, what we're calling checkpoints along the way. And if things aren't getting checked off along the way, then the commitment obligation would not be there anymore. So where those points are in section 6, which is called feasibility assessment, performance requirement, conditions, contingencies, checkpoints, long title. And then we go through and we have basically 6 checkpoints. So do you want me to run through those very quickly?
It's the equivalent of one for each of the tasks, correct?
Not exactly. So they don't line up with the tasks. They really line up with more things that I thought we need to make sure a box can be checked. So the first one is mutual determination of feasibility. So that is task 1. And so we both would have to look at the result of a feasibility study and say, we both feel good about the project, let's go on. Secondly, somewhere in this process, and it's been hard to pin down, regardless of what we think, regardless of what the city thinks, we may have to go through the independent feasibility analysis with the Department of Commerce. So that's an additional checkpoint that says, regardless, again, of what the PFD thinks, regardless of what the city thinks, we're going to have this other source look at the feasibility. And if we don't pass the checkpoint there, then third is availability of funds. District can't commit money it doesn't have. So if there's some supervening event that changes the projected revenue stream, then of course. Checkpoint number 4 is the title is Port Orchard's performance of assigned tasks. Of course, the district's commitments are conditioned on the Port Orchard meeting all of its assigned tasks as we go along. And one of those, I think it's in task 4, is to have all the necessary funding in place. So we will get to a point where Port Orchard's going to have to come and say, here's our funding plan. And it either is there or it's not there. And if it's not there, then the PFD's commitment. At some point, if we're going to really get to the point of construction, what we've done in the past is had operational standards, maintenance standards, facility standards, and so on built into an ILA. Sometimes we call those operational ILA. Rather than try and create that now when we're years away from construction, I put in a checkpoint, and the checkpoint is that before the large commitment of funding, we do have to have negotiated a operational ILA. So those are the checkpoints that we built in here to try and city a sense of a big commitment, at the same time giving you, the board, or your successors, again, these checkpoints to make sure everything is actually moving forward as planned and anticipated.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'd like to invite the board to ask either Mayor Patansu or Brian any questions that you have regarding the ILA.
I have a question for Brian. Now, what I have is labeled second draft, and it has a few blanks in here that yet need to be completed. So I'm not sure that I have the latest and greatest.
You don't.
You don't.
Because the blanks are filled.
The blanks are filled. So again, I apologize for sending you a document that apparently wasn't printable. But there's a third draft. The mayor gave us his revisions to the second draft last Tuesday at our meeting.
Correct.
The third draft. I sent that out on Friday. I sent it with a 2-page summary of past issues and how they were resolved, if they were resolved.
So have we and the city completed trading comments, revisions, spell checks? Are we in agreement on
there's some
a
subtle
final?
language from Fridays that our attorney where we there's a date certain that's been filled in. We still need to talk about that date certain.
We're not quite ready to approve the final.
We're not approved, but I think we would greatly appreciate you approving to form and the global commitment, and then I can get the same commitment from my city council, and that gives the bank the assurance that they're looking for. Will we finish dotting I's and crossing T's?
Thank you.
And I'll just pose that question to Brian then, as the other person negotiating the ILA. Would you be comfortable with that request of us, if we would decide as a board to fund that global commitment or the big picture ask, with the small pieces that haven't been finalized between the two parties yet?
I am. I think that the issues we're down to are relatively small. I have an issue if you approve it in concept, subject to final review of the final document.
I have a question. Your comments, Mayor. Did I understand you to say that the funding that is laid out here, where we don't do a bond issue, is satisfactory to you?
It is. We had a very good conversation, Darren, Bill, and I, with Kitsap Bank, your bond counsel, and Kitsap Bank's financial advisor also. And we feel there's a path forward there. I mean, we're realistically 2 or 3 years, depending on, if this agreement stands and we do another feasibility study, we're probably 3 years, okay? We don't have to answer that question for 3 years. And today, I would say yes, that makes sense. There could be economic factors 3 years from now that we all pause on this. And but today, yes, I think we would be comfortable with that. And I think that should be the case when we get to step 6 here. You're likely pledging cash flow, and one of the 3 public partners is issuing debt, and it's probably a private placement bond very similar to what we've done, and it isn't, it's in the just shy of $10 million range.
Thank you.
Question. Brian, who signs the ILA representing the PFD?
The person to your left.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Port Orchard ILA as to form, and authorize the chairman to work with our attorney to finalize the document.
And I would like to give Aaron, if you would like to be the second, since you represent this area as well, if you'd like to be the second on the motion.
I second it.
All right. Any discussion?
The ILA calls for a commitment of $12 million. Bill's proposal earlier called for $10.5 million, and he's a South Kitsap rep on the board, so I think we need to decide, do we want to make it 12 or make it 10.5?
Well, my earlier proposal was just construction and land acquisition, not the soft costs that are included.
Happy with the 12?
I'm happy with this ILA, and how we do our own financing is yet up to date.
Any other questions or discussion? I would want to speak in favor of the ILA. I think Port Orchard is our #1 project. We went through that process, and it makes it easy for me to say yes to this project of this is the one that we're going to do as we find out more of the finances. As we go forward, we can continue with discussions of others, but our commitment is to the Port Orchard Event Center.
Library.
All right, then all those in favor of approving this ILA and our commitment to it, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, well, it's been a long process. for getting to this point, and a lot of twists and turns. So, you know, I feel like kind of clapping.
I
like,
agree.
Hey. I'd like to invite up now the Polsbo group to speak to our ILA with the Polsbo Event and Recreation Center.
Good evening, Public Facility Board and Executive Director Walton and lawyer Brian Loyler. Congratulations to Port Orchard as they're moving on.
Moving on.
Moving on. Thank you for this opportunity tonight to present to you the Polsbo Event and Recreation Center ILA. It's been 12 months since Polsbo really embarked on our proposal effort to consider what a public facility could be for our community, and really 3 years since our original outreach to our Polsbo community and the North Kitsap community about a new public facilities, an event center and a recreation center in North Kitsap County. So we really appreciate the board's diligence and the commitment to the selection process that we are going through, and that you just finished up on one just a few minutes ago. And we really, again, thank you for helping the city to reach this milestone. And so we are here tonight to present to you an interlocal agreement that we've negotiated with your executive and your legal counsel, and to listen to any questions that you might have, although I know you just received it tonight. And we are hopeful to have a action on your behalf at your December 2nd meeting in the city of Polsbo. So I want to go ahead and introduce someone that I think you all know, but Peter Bacciuello. He is our consultant that has been assisting the city staff and the mayor, the city council in getting us to tonight. So he's here for any details on the ILA and our attachments that you might have. I want to note also that we had a very productive meeting on October 3rd with your staff, with your executive and legal counsel, and we really appreciate their efforts on our behalf on this ILA as well. So what you have before you is an interlocal agreement for Phase 1 activities that will allow the parties to complete the Public Facility District's Phase 1 funding process. So I believe that you have might be aware that we have crafted this ILA and to be consistent with the feasibility study guide for sports and recreation facilities that was produced by your executive director in the August meeting. We also have crafted this ILA to be consistent with the KPFD proposal funding process that was dated June 7th, 2017. And so we believe that we're following the directions that you have provided for us for this ILA crafting. And then, of course, the proposal on the project that's in the ILA is consistent with our December 31st, 2018 proposal as presented then, of course, to you in March. We do have some clarifications for the funding that has been further refined, but you'll notice that it is still very consistent with what we asked for as part of our December 31st proposal. So what the ILA presents to you in attachments is a detailed work description and roles and responsibilities of each party who are solely the city of Polsbo and the Kitsap Public Facility District, and that's attachment A. And again, that's based on the example that your executive director provided to the teams for what they want to see in an ILA. It also the ILA also identifies the financial commitments that the city has made in bringing, this project to the point, which is about $60,000, and identifies the KPFD's financial commitment at $244,000. And then it includes a schedule showing the Phase 1 work that's going to be completed in 2020. Now, based on the comments that we heard in the September meeting when we met with your team, we really wanted to ensure that we were providing the assurances that the board felt necessary in order to determine that this project is feasible, or I think at that time you were speaking to all the projects. And so what we've put in is we've set up two things. One, which is a phased approach to ILAs. So that's what we're presenting to you tonight, is that this is ILA for Phase 1. We would come back to you after we're all in agreement that what the results of that, of the feasibility study, the financial study, all of the pieces that are in there. Then we would come back with a phase 2, which would be design and construction costs, and then our design, and then the final phase 3 would be ILA, would be construction. So it's all laid out in the ILA, attachment A, but really what we want to do is ensure that the KPFD and the City of Poulsbo are walking step in step together on this project and having full assurance of the board that this is a project that is going to be successful, can be funded, and we can be sustainable. Because our interests are the same as your interests, of course. And then finally, we identified in the ILA that we want to offer third-party review rights to any analysis and conclusions. That speaks to the board's concern about wanting to have an independent feasibility study to ensure that the project's feasible. Instead of having kind of some redundancies, what we suggested and your team thought might work for you is to have third-party rights to any step of the way. So each one of those tasks would result in like a technical report that then at any point in time the board or your team could request a third-party review of and make sure that it's working the way we think it's going to work, and that you again have that independent review of it to make sure that there isn't something that we're maybe being optimistic about or not. So we offer those, and then the third thing so we offer the phased ILA approach, third-party independent review, and then finally we offer a steering committee, a coordination committee between the KPFD, City of Poulsbo, and then what we would entertain as our stakeholder group, where we would invite citizens and of Poulsbo to help craft the feasibility of this phase 1. And so we are definitely open to having a committee that PFD chair or the Poulsbo representative can sit on, as well as the executive director. And so again, our ideal is walking lockstep with the PFD through this feasibility study in hopes that we come to the same conclusion at the end. So we believe it's a public process. It would definitely be open and transparent, and we think we hope that it responds to the concerns and questions that we've heard over the last few months listening to your board meetings. And so just in conclusion, the city would like to, since you've got our final draft tonight, we don't expect that you are going to make a motion on it. Of course, if you want to, that would be fine. But what we would be interested in is having you have a chance over the next month to read over the ILA. Again, we're here for any questions, but just be able to sit on it. You certainly can feel free to email us or call for a meeting any between now and December 2nd meeting. And so with that, I'm going to conclude my comments and see if you have any questions for myself or Peter. So thank you very much.
Before we ask any questions of you, I'd like to give Brian the same opportunity to speak to the ILA from his perspective as our main negotiator, the main person who has already gone through this process with you.
Certainly. Thank you, Darren. You may recall before the last meeting in September, the city had given us comments to our first draft, and those comments were relatively few, and I don't think they were controversial or difficult. They were more in the nature of refinements and clarifications. We then met with the city's team. Did you say October 3rd?
October 3rd. Mm-hmm.
And went through in detail, not just the form of the document, but the concepts that have been expressed here tonight about the phased approach. To me, there's a high level of detail in the schedules from the City of Poulsbo. We talked through. I think we talked more about the concepts than the nitty-gritty of the ILA, because there just weren't that many sticky points at all. So, I think in terms of a form, it meets our requirements. Again, it's phased, which is something we think we wanted, and maybe Port Orchard's an outlier on that. Phased, so there's no commitment beyond what the
All right, any questions for Carla or Peter or Brian.
So we've finished trading comments and recommended revisions and all of that, and all those are included and agreed on in this.
Right, so what you have in front of you is a clean draft of the edits that, and the minor edits between Brian and the city. Right, so clean.
Chairman, I'm not sure we need to wait for another month. We're committing $244,000, and I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next 30 days.
I agree wholeheartedly. I appreciate your thoroughness. I appreciate your detail that is already put in this ILA. And so I'm impressed with it. Any other discussion, though? Any other questions that you have for either Brian or Carla or Peter? All right.
I would move that we approve the ILA with the city of Paulsbo.
And I'll second it. That's a good question. I never do, but since it's Paulsbo, I thought I would in this case. Yeah. All those, any discussion again? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right. Your ILA is passed.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We look forward to our phase one together.
And with
So thank you.
is the commitment for the $244,000.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
That'll be the 977 fund.
Yes. Yes.
I will begin discussions immediately with the Treasurer's Department in order to set up 2 additional funds, one for Port Orchard and one for Paulsbo, to prepare to be able to transfer funds on completion of discussions between myself and Darren in order to approve that process. Worst case, it'll probably be set up and ready by the December meeting.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to invite up now for 5C representatives for the county and the Heritage Park ILA, Cole and Eric. Welcome. I'd like to give you the opportunity to share as one of our top 3 projects that we've begun the work with the ILAs, where we're at with the ILA with Heritage Park, anything that you want to make us aware of, and any questions you have for us.
Great. Thanks for getting us on the agenda tonight. I'm Cole Medina. I'm the president and CEO of the Kitsap Community Foundation, which runs the Kitsap County Parks Foundation, and thus our involvement in this project. Eric Baker, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Eric Baker with the Kitsap County Commissioner's Office. I'm the policy manager.
Thanks for having us, PFD board members, executive director, and Brian. It's nice to be here tonight. You guys have had some good energy in the room tonight. I like it. I hope you all feel good. We wanted to give you a brief update on our ILA. This is going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to recap much of what I said at your last meeting, which was, hey, you guys have been looking at various different ways to deploy your dollars into the community or various types of timetables, and this project is amenable to any of those. This project could take a large influx or commitment like you just gave to the Port Orchard project of $10 million or more, or this project could take smaller increments every year for a long time. We can split this up however you guys want. And another aspect of this project that doesn't apply to the others is that this project's literally ready to start moving dirt, if not by the end of the year, in the first quarter of next year. We're just waiting for some final permits to get that ride park going. So what we have been working on, and when I say we, I really mean Eric and the county with Mike and Brian, is an ILA that will present to you a 2-year plan. It's going to be a timetable showing you exactly what we could get done in the next 2 years and how much, with some real dollars, those things would cost, or we expect those things to cost over the next 2 years, so that you can have a proposal of real work getting done over the next 2 years, as opposed to some of the other projects that have these longer timetables. And for various reasons, I think Mike and Brian and Eric thought that would be meaningful to you all. But that is not to say that we're not interested in the much larger funding allotment that we asked for originally. And since Eric has been the one actually talking to your staff about this, we wanted Eric to be here to tell you more details about it.
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with PFD staff, and legal counsel was really kind of helpful. Exactly what Cole laid out there is accurate. Our project is scalable. It is a project that can deal with amounts of money over time versus any real lump sum. And we really are trying to focus and put down basically quarterly expenses that would go along with this project, as well as what would the PFD's money be, what would the other match money be into these projects, really kind of focusing over the next 2 years. Just to recap the projects that are included in our 2-year window that we're going to be showing to PFD staff in early November for presentation to the PFD board for your December 3rd meeting is the ride park that is currently under permitting. It is the Sound to Olympics Trail, which has already had a feasibility study done. It is broken up into various segments. The northern segment marries very well with the ride park and provides a connection between the town as well as the ride park itself. And then the third piece is the master plan, which covers the ride park, it covers the Sound to Olympics Trail, but it also covers what could these two assets, if constructed, what other monies could be leveraged and what other opportunities could be leveraged from it. I think from the feasibility study angle, I think the master plan includes a significant amount of the market analysis and other materials that I think some of the other projects have been looking to prepare. But what we do have is we have a project that could benefit from money right now. Small amounts of money over the next 2 years could get large quantities of things completed out there for the public to enjoy today, putting the PFD's economic development money to work now, not 5 years from now, not 8 years from now. So again, we apologize that it's taken this long, but because we're really looking at some of the things that are going to be coming out of studies that the other two projects are putting together, we're trying to put them together for you now based upon work that's already been achieved and doing it, showing it by quarter for 2020, 2021 on, again, all these various facets of the project. As Cole indicated, we do still have the desire to complete the entirety of the project, and we have lesser detail as we kind of move outside the 2 years. A lot of our focus on this ILA is over the next 2-year period and isn't just necessarily soft cost needs. It's hard on the ground. You can bike there, close of business 2021. You can ride from the town site into 2021 and provide benefits immediately. Anything I left out, Cole?
I want to reiterate the timing. The goal is to have a draft done in a couple of weeks so that it's ready to go a couple of weeks before your meeting. You guys can get it, have plenty of time to think about it before that December 2nd meeting.
Brian, I want to give you the same opportunity. Anything that you would want to make the board aware of in the discussions that you've had so far with the county?
I would echo what Eric and Cole have said. We had a very productive meeting with the county team several weeks ago. They appear to be wanting to be very thoughtful and detailed in their approach. Their goal is to have an ILA approved by the end of the year. They're aware of when the last meeting was. They didn't want to come tonight because they didn't feel they had everything together that they would like to have together. We discussed timing, which is, Thanksgiving is late in so we're looking at dates in mid-November to have what hopefully is just a review meeting of what their proposal is. And to see if we have any questions. And I think as soon as we have that meeting, then we'll have something to get back to the board members.
All right. So board, any questions? We don't have a motion before us. We don't have an ILA before us. But any questions that you have for either Eric or Cole or Brian tonight?
I'm not sure for which one of you, whoever wants to respond. We discussed earlier about the concept of the sponsoring agency obtaining their own funding, and then we provide money to help them service whatever debt they have to incur. Of course, the two cities, Paulsbo and Port Orchard, have the ability to bond. What's the ability of the Kitsap County Park Foundation to get lump sums of money that we could then help you pay off?
While the Kitsap Community Foundation is a strong partner, it is Kitsap County who would be handling the bonding exercises. I think what you'll find from what we're talking about over the next 2 years and subsequent, we are talking about smaller amounts of money, ones that don't necessarily require significant amounts of bonding. But Kitsap County does have strong bond rating and the ability to provide those types of funds if that's the direction that the Public Facilities District is interested in going.
I have a question. Your projects, the Sound to Olympics Trail, how much progress do you anticipate in this 2 years?
In the 2-year period, the feasibility study is broken up into multiple segments. Basically, the top starts at the Port Gamble town site proper. The ride park, of course, is off to the west of it. Basically, it would build the first 3 segments, roughly, for the first 2 years, we could actually get to design of those 2, and that those will be connected to the ride park. The ride park itself will move along significantly faster with construction planned by the end of 2021. But you'd probably be looking at connection from the town site to the ride park in a design format, with the idea that we will be leveraging the PFD money and the design money for construction dollars through the STP programs and other transportation grant sources, as well as WWRP that will be happening concurrently in 2020 and 2021.
Any other questions?
I was just going to say, I think it probably could move along more quickly than that, but we want to make use of those grant sources and move it along at a pace that would allow us to do that.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing the ILA in December. Moving on to number 6, I want to note the time that we're at 7:20. It's been a long meeting, and for these next new business items, if we could move through them as quickly as possible. Mike, can you present the draft of the 2020 budget for our review?
Yeah, and before the rest of the crowd leaves, I wanted to have a round of applause for the city of Paulsbo and their project. We didn't do that because they actually got some money and an ILA out of that process as well.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, okay, the draft 2020 budget, you do have a copy of that in your folders. That has had some recent additions. I had just received communications today from our financial advisor, Alan. He estimated that there would probably be around $4,000 of expense between now and the end of the year, but had estimated that the expense in 2020 would be significantly larger, and part of that is going to depend on what the activities are and what actions need to be accomplished. But he estimated that it might be around $15,000, and I believe that the line item that I included in there for bonding and financing about halfway down the page was $20,000. That's his fee, but whatever additional fee there may be for bond counsel, if they're utilized at any point during 2020. There is still some elevated payroll expenses. The IT and website expenses are larger than they've been in the past because that's mainly been just a maintenance kind of a thing where I've been doing most of the updating. That website is getting quite dated now and probably needs a makeover. The IT person that we'd worked with before, Chris Blair, is a website web design fellow, and I will talk to him and see what his recommendations may be on any upgrade or redo. If it's going to be a redo, then it's going to be significantly more expensive, and that will come back to the board for any consideration or approval. The legal expenses are higher. The governance expenditure for the board stipends is higher. That brings the proposed budget for next year up to just under $230,000.
Any questions for Mike?
Do we need to crank up that 20,000 since that's going to be taken up by the financial advisor and doesn't really allow anything for bond counsel at all?
Yeah, it probably around $5,000, and I don't have an estimate from that. And Brian, if you would check with Mark and see if they want to put a number in the water about what any expenses they may have or will they have until we do a bond offering.
I'm willing to do that. Can we have a little discussion? If the arrangement with Foster Pepper is on a contingent fee basis, flat rate based on bond
Amount of the bond.
issuance. So if it's unlikely that bonds would be issued next year, I think we could put like just a placeholder number in there, but it's going to be a small number because we're not going to get billed until there's.
Okay, leave it out.
Any other questions?
So we'll be asked to approve the final at
That will
December
be at
meeting.
the December meeting. This was discussion, and to make you aware that that number was going up. We were around 200,000. By the time we got to the end of this year, it'll be around that number. So this is still, about another 10 or 15% above what we are expending this year.
I'd like to just point out on what our financial advisor had given us with the operating expenses. Aaron's comment earlier is very appropriate. We're making a $50,000 jump here in 1 year, which will be a considerable percentage, much more than 1%. And so, good advice. All right, on to item number B, resolution for next year's meeting schedule.
Yeah, and you have a copy of that in your folders, I believe. And basically, that's scheduling for a meeting a month, backing off from the 2 meetings a month that we had through the bulk of 2019. It does combine the November and December meetings as we have done in the past few years. There is one change from that. The meetings are typically on the fourth Monday or the fourth Monday of a 5-Monday month, with the exception of January, where that's on the third Monday of the month. That's not what's
That third Monday of the month was at my request because I will be gone for the fourth Monday.
And the key there is that January meeting is also the event fund meeting. And currently there is a schedule based on what has typically been the fourth Monday of the month for submission of final applications for event funds and when the meeting and approval will happen. So if we approve this resolution for the meeting schedule for next month or next year, I'll need to make those changes to the website as well.
All right, with that, for this one, is there any reason why we shouldn't vote on it tonight?
I think we should.
Okay, can I have a motion then?
I move to approve the Resolution 05-2019 as outlined in paperwork we received today.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Is that Rick that seconded?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, speak up.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Resolution 05-2019 passes. Moving on to 6C.
Walt's abstaining.
Yeah, Walt is abstaining. 6C, Bainbridge Island Parks District, PRA request update.
The bulk of the compliance and submission for their request has been done. There have been 2 different thumb drives delivered to Executive Director Landy. I believe the only item, unless you sent an email to them with your redaction, and then we still have to submit the final exclusion and redaction table to them. And I'll work with Brian and we'll get that done by the end of the week.
Thank you. For our next 2 reports on item 6D, the KCC and KFEC Regional Facilities Report, let's leave those to read on our own and move on to 7A, announcements, and specifically, Mike, anything you want to say about the conference?
Yeah. Some of you attended the PFD conference last year, which was here in the Seattle Conference Center, or the Washington State Conference Center. This one is in Yakima, and I've continued to attend these, and I will be attending this one, and that's where I hope to hook up again with the representatives from the Department of Commerce and reestablish that communication, which was very strong for the 6 months after the first PFD conference, but seemed to have evaporated by this time. So I'll get that fixed and have a report for you at the December meeting. Anybody else want to go?
I'd love to go, but I don't think I want to sit in a car that long right now.
All right. Any other announcements, Mike?
There are no other announcements at this time.
Right. Then we'll move on to item number 8, our executive session for tonight. And just say that the board is going into executive session as authorized by RCW 42.30.110 to evaluate the performance of a public employee. The executive session will end at 6:30. No, it will not. It'll end at 7:45 p.m. And if I could ask the powers that be in the back room to cut the mics and cut the cameras.